I'm Bob Riggio. With me is Lowell Davis, one of the many veterans that you see whose face is on the honor banners that are located throughout Rapid City. And Lowell, I believe your banner is located on West Main, somewhere near the Journal. And each one of these banners, and there's over 300 banners located throughout Rapid City, each one of these banners, many of them have a story to tell. And Lowell, that's what we're going to ask of you.
Well, I grew up in a ranch out of Lemmon, South Dakota. I was born on August 19th, 1929. 93 years old right now.
Bless your heart.
I went to South Dakota State College at that time, it was called. People who weren't veterans had to serve in the Reserve Officer Training Corps at Land Grant College.
What year was this, first of all?
This is 1947, the fall of 1947.
Okay, was the draft in place or?
The draft was in place, but that had nothing to do with that time for me.
So you were in officers training school?
For the first 2 years is basic.
Okay.
And then if you want to stay in the program, then you go into advanced ROTC at South Dakota State. When I graduated on the 4th of June, 1951, we were second lieutenants.
What was the first base post that you served at?
The first post was at Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to the Reserve Officers Training class down at Fort Benning. When I graduated, I was what they call a distinguished military graduate, and I was offered to go into the regular Army if I wanted to do that, and I accepted that. And my date of rank at that time was on June 15th of 1951 when I went down there.
Okay, so once you accepted that, did that mean you had to remain in the Army for a certain period of time, a longer period of time?
Yes, that is correct. A minimum of 3 years.
Minimum of 3 years. And you served in the U.S., you got your basic training in the U.S., and then you were shipped overseas. Where did you go?
First I was at Fort Benning, and I had the advantage of being stationed down there for a full year. There was one particular course that really prepared me more for combat than any other. Okay. There was one class that actually used live ammunition, and I had the advantage of running that particular class for many, many months. And that really, really helped me when I got into combat.
Because you were in combat over in Korea,
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I went to Korea in September of 1952 and was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division. I was with the 3rd Infantry Division that entire time.
And how long did you serve over in Korea? How many years?
The war got over in July of 1953, and I actually came home in November of 1953. I was awarded the Bronze Star and the Silver Star and the Distinguished Service Cross, and also the Purple Heart. Yeah, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. And you have to be in combat for a certain length of time before you are awarded that badge. I was in combat from September of 1952 until the war ended in July of '53. Well, the Distinguished Service Cross, we were on an outpost that was about 2 miles forward of the main line of resistance. So we were very, very close to the Chinese lines. It was really the hot spot at that time in Korea, was this particular outpost. It was a mountain, and it was very, very rocky. You couldn't even dig a foxhole there. It was so rocky, and so people would fill sandbags and they would build their bunkers above the ground.
And what was your duty there? I mean, you were a commander,
I was a platoon leader in the George Company, G Company, and as a platoon leader you had 3 squads, infantry squads, and a weapons squad. It was an area that the people at the higher up echelon felt that it was a controlling terrain that between us and the Chinese.
And then did the Chinese attack, and
yes,
you were in combat there?
They attacked more than once, but this one time they attacked, and they figured that it was a battalion-size attack of the hill. The battalion is about 3 times as larger than our company was.
So how long was the combat? I imagine it was the Chinese attacked a number of times.
They did, but the one that, this particular one was their biggest attack by far. Most of the weaponry was artillery and mortar fire, thousands of rounds.
And you didn't have foxholes to hide into, did you?
Like we built above ground, but didn't have foxholes like they did on the front lines.
And how long did you hold the hill?
We were out there for about a week. What happened was that the higher up people back at the battalion and the level felt that it was untenable to stay there, and so they ordered our withdrawal.
And the reason for the Distinguished Service Cross?
That's kind of a difficult one for me to talk about, but what had happened was that early on in the mortar fire, I was rendered unconscious, and they thought at the time that it was from a concussion, but we found out later on that it was from overhead shrapnel that hit the top of my steel helmet and had dented my steel helmet, and that's what had actually knocked me out. But what had happened after the information had come back to pull off the hill, that the company commander took one of the platoon leaders and they left. And so that left me as in charge of the outpost. Yeah. And on the way out, the lieutenant that was with him was killed on the way out, and he got back to the line by himself. And then so we stayed until the second attack from the Chinese until later that night and morning.
Tell us a story about the Purple Heart.
Well, the Purple Heart is awarded to anybody that is wounded in action. And later on, we had attack with mortars and fires and just shrapnel.
On the same hill? Or
No, this is a completely different hill. After we pulled off of this hill, they never went back up and got that. The Chinese took it over. It wasn't really cold at that time. This actually happened, this real big attack on us was on October 27th. We had good clothing. We wasn't a problem with that. Anything like what the people early in the war, they fought the cold weather, something terrible, and didn't have good equipment. But we had Mickey Mouse boots that were really good, and your feet never got cold.
When these mortars are dropping in on you folks, keep your head down until it stops, and then you stick your head out and start firing back, or how does that work?
Well, what happened is when I regained my consciousness, machine gun had a direct hit and it was upside down, and so part of the crew was wounded, but they were not wounded that they couldn't fight. And so I turned the machine gun over and got it going again, and then at that time I started working with my other squads. I was the last one to leave along with another lieutenant, and he was wounded, and so we were the last two that left the hill.
How many men in your platoon?
About 30.
About 30 of you.
It's about 101 people, I think, for the entire company.
How many Chinese do you think there were?
They figured probably 300.
So 100 soldiers, U.S. soldiers, defending this hill against 300 Chinese, something along those lines.
That's about right, yeah.
Well, again, it's an honor to shake your hand. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.